Dear listeners, this is the third part of this story. If you haven't seen the past part, we recommend you watch them first. The sun was shining brightly, some piercingly cold white light, making it impossible to see the figure on the opposite shore. The man put the pipe on his shoulder and froze. I was trying to make contact with the slave chopper when a stinger hit us from the right bank. It was so fast that the pilots of the second helicopter had not even noticed when it launched. The rocket hit us squarely on the port side. Instantly, the contact fuse went off and the steel dragonfly turned into a shapeless ball of fire, scattering debris, hit the water, scattering a myriad of fiery spray tearing human bodies to shreds. I woke up screaming. I should have died in that helicopter with the competent. At the last moment, Koida threw me badly wounded into the first helicopter. I sat on the edge of the bed and gradually the events of yesterday began to fill my brain. I turned my head. Natasha was not there. My first thought was that she had run away. Stole what she couldn't run away. But at that moment, my nostrils caught the smell of food being cooked. The door to the kitchen slammed in. Natasha, in a sports jacket hanging down to her knees, entered the room. Good morning. Breakfast is ready. She smiled as she stood on the floor barefoot. Somehow I felt as comfortable as I hadn't felt in the past 6 months. Women can make a comfort out of nothing. For a minute, it seemed like nothing had happened. I was with my family again. Now my wife will turn around, fix my bangs and kiss my cheek. On my lap with joyful laughter will climb my daughter, Sasha. But her indifferent face stood before my eyes and my good mood vanished at once. I pulled on my camouflage pants and staggered into the bathroom. In the mirror, I looked at me not yet old, overgrown double man with an army badge on his neck. Looking at the silver oval on a leather cord, hidden in the battered gray hair on my chest, I thought for some reason that the wall wasn't going to let me go anytime soon. I ran my finger down my cheek. I should shave or not. I wonder if unevenness is still in fashion. It's not going to be an easy day. And the most important event for me would be a meeting with Vera. I splashed water on my face and scratched my hairy chest with pleasure. It was time to move out. I opened the door and saw Natasha standing behind it. Everything is getting cold. I had breakfast with scrambled eggs and stew, drank a glass of tea and kissed a woman on the cheek and went to get ready. I put on a t-shirt, a sweater, and a winter army jacket. Tying his shoes, he told Natasha, "Stay at home. Don't go anywhere. I'll take care of business and come back for you. We'll go buy you some clothes." A question came to my mind. A question that had been on my mind since last night. Where did you get the key to this apartment? Natasha blushed instantly and looked away. I used to live here with my grandfather. What do you mean lived here? I had a bad feeling about it. In the literal sense, the old landlord was my grandfather. I lived with him for a year and a half working, looking after him. Everybody left him. No son, no daughter to look after him. And he had 2 heart attacks. He promised to sign the apartment over to me, but he didn't have time. The 3rd heart attack finished him off. Then his kids came and threw me out on the street. I lived at work for a while until they fired me from there too. Natasha spoke calmly. Without emotion. It was obvious that she had long burned out. Okay. It's a long story. You can tell me later. I buttoned my jacket and checked the tactical knife on my hip. I didn't take it because I feared for my life. I just remembered my father's words. A man should have 3 things in his pocket: a knife, a handkerchief, and $10. I wonder why my father didn't include condoms in that list. The snowfall was over. The sky had cleared and the cold winter was looking at me in a friendly way. I got into a cab I had ordered and called the address. It was a Sunday and the city was clear of cars whizzing back and forth. I got out of the car and stood in front of the doorway for a while. About 3 meters away was a black SUV. There were two men sitting in the car smoking with the window ajar, and two streams of gray smoke rising. I did not see anything else in particular. I walked up to the fourth floor and came to the door. Everything seemed normal for now. I inserted the key and turned it carefully. The lock clicked and the door opened. Yesterday, when I left, I closed the lock with 2 turns. So there is someone in the apartment. It is unlikely Vera. She should come only 2 hours later. I carefully opened the door and slipped into the apartment. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. Silent. I could hear the clock ticking in the hall. I peeked through the doorway. There was a man lying awkwardly face down on the rug with his hand tucked under his arm. One shoe had slipped off his foot and lay lolling orphaned a little away from the rest of his body to the naked eye. It was clear that he was long and safely dead and did not enliven the scenery at all. Rather the opposite. The one word that pulsed through his headlight red fire was fucked up. It was urgent to get out of here. I closed the front door just as quietly and began to carefully wipe the doorknob with my handkerchief. I heard the approaching howl of a police siren. Makes sense. Downstairs the entryway door slammed and indistinct voices could be heard. The elevator clicked and rode down, obediently counting down the floors. I rushed to the top. Luckily for me, the attic was open. It was only a matter of minutes before I jumped out on the roof and ran to the last exit. On the way, I grabbed a broom that was by the wall and a big red bucket. It was quiet in the entryway. I quickly rolled down to the first floor and froze in front of the front door. Godspeed. I put the red bucket in front of me and walked out onto the porch. On the right were 2 police cars and a patrolman in a baggy, crumpled uniform with a submachine gun. I turned slowly to the left when I heard a stamping of feet behind me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 cops rushing into the entryway. I rounded the corner, leaned my equipment carefully against the wall, and went out to the bus stop. In a few minutes, I was dangling like a sausage in a crowded salon. So that was it. Whose setup was this? I had one question on my mind so far. Clearly, there were cameras in the entryway. I had helped install them myself in my past life, but my jacket had a good hood up to my eyes. And I turned my head away just in time. I dialed Varant's number and moved the meeting to a place only we knew about. We were sitting at a table in a cozy cafe in an old neglected city park. I love that place. Sometimes on weekends, we would come here for ice cream. My wife would sit across from me and speak softly, trying not to meet my eyes. In her 3rd year of medical school, Vera fell in love, as they say, head over heels. Dennis was 5 years older and studied at the university in the law department. Tall, handsome, with beautiful brown eyes, and she, a blue-eyed blonde with a gorgeous figure. They complemented and shaded each other's beauty. Their romance was growing. The lovers wanted to get married, but decided to finish university first. Dennis rented a 1-room apartment in the city, and they began to live together. Vera did not notice anyone else. There was only one man for her, Dennis. Their parents were aware of this relationship and asked only one thing to delay their child: to finish her studies and have a son or daughter in a legal marriage. Her final exams were over and an internship was waiting for Vera in the fall. Dennis was going to leave for an internship in August. So they decided to schedule the wedding for July. On the eve of the wedding, Vera was in a state of euphoria of love, counting days before the most important event in the life of any woman. The wedding dress was already being sewn. The restaurant was booked and tickets to the honeymoon were booked. That night, they made love. And when Vera woke up in the morning, she not found Dennis beside her. She threw her robe over her bare body and walked barefoot into the kitchen. Strangely, he wasn't there either. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Not either. She went back into the kitchen again. An uneasy feeling crept into her heart. Where is he? Maybe he ran to the store. And suddenly, Vera saw a white square of paper lying on the table pressed with an empty coffee cup. She picked up the note and sat down on the stool. "I'm sorry, but I've fallen in love with someone else. Don't look for me. That's life. It happens." The letters began to sprawl and Vera thought her heart had stopped. She wanted to scream, but she didn't have enough air. The girl stood up and tried to go to the window, but suddenly the floor shook and she lost consciousness. Vera came to her senses for a long time, even wanted to commit suicide. But she was young and soon met Yuri. He even looked a little like Dennis. She dove headlong into her new love and 3 months later they were married. 2 weeks after the wedding, Dennis showed up in town. He told her that he had made a mistake, that he loved only Vera. He suggested she leave her husband and go away with him. Vera was smart enough at the time not to give in to his exhortations. She did not leave her husband but could not resist her former lover. They slept together. Then Dennis left. And a month later, Vera found out that she was pregnant. There was no limit to Yuri's joy. A daughter was born, Sasha. The husband adored his beloved girls. Yuri was a military man and the family wandered with him through garrisons, but they loved each other, all 3 of them. Finally, fate threw them into their native city. My husband went on fewer business trips, but those that were there lasted a long time. Yui started earning more money. Vera also went her way from an ordinary therapist in a district clinic to the head doctor of a medical center. Yuri was only surprised at the rapid career of his wife. Nothing changed. They seemed to love each other even more firmly. Then Dennis found Vera. He matured into an imposing man. He transferred from the capital to the position of chairman of the regional court. His personal life did not work out, and he again began to seduce his former mistress. And Vera gave in. She did not fall out of love with Yuri after all. So many years together, but she could not resist the onslaught of her ex. They began to meet. Vera was torn between 2 men not daring to give preference to someone. And then something happened that Vera had not expected. Dennis found out about Sasha and demanded a genetic test. A DNA test showed that he was her biological father. That solved everything. Vera was about to leave Yuri, but he left on another long business trip. And a month later, Vera learned that he had died. There was nobody, as after the explosion of the helicopter, there was nothing left. Fate decided everything for her. Dennis brought her a paper from the military registration and enlistment office that her husband had died a hero's death. Vera was sad and a week later she agreed to marry Dennis, having previously dissolved her marriage with Yuri. They told Sasha that her mother's former husband was not her father, and she wiped away her tears and snot and rushed into Dennis's arms with a joyful squeal. Happy Dennis showered his beloved girls with gifts. He bought Sasha a castle. She would not remember her, not father who had raised and loved her for almost 20 years. Money solved everything. Everything was great. Everyone was happy until the lively and disgusting first husband showed up. Vera stroked my arm and looked at me with inflamed eyes. "Yuri, it was a mistake. I really believed that you were dead. I even put a candle for your repose. I had no idea it wasn't true." People from the Army registration office came to me and offered their condolences. Dennis handled the whole thing. He even made a request to your unit. They confirmed everything. Everything was clear. Dennis had cut off all the tails. Power and money had done their job. Love had nothing to do with it. Especially Sasha was his daughter. The family was reunited and the loser was left with nothing. 20 years for nothing. She left me without a second thought, relieved that everything had worked itself out. Did she love me or was she just adjusting? Who will know now? My thoughts swelled to my head like a flock of gray crows constantly returning to my daughter. Her betrayal was killing me more than anything. Yes. I had spoiled their party, especially Sasha's. I stood up. All right, Vera. Do not grieve. No more. I will not appear on your horizon. Live and breathe calmly in 2 nostrils, and I will go further. Farewell. Euro, but I still love you. But it happened. This is fate. I left like a man without turning around. My thoughts returned to the dead stranger in the apartment. It was clear that they were trying to set me up. But who and why? How did they know I would be in the apartment? Had they listened to my conversation with Vera? What for? Who did I step on? My toes so much that they decided to put me behind bars? Was it Dennis? I remembered his triumphant face at the party. Maybe he was afraid that Vera would come back to me. But if he was a man, he should understand that this was impossible. No matter how the circumstances, I would never take Vera back, no matter how much I loved her. I won't be able to forgive the betrayal. Sasha? It's more complicated than that. A daughter, after all. But what daughter is she to me? She's his daughter. I still couldn't get over the DNA test results. In fact, because of it, Vera had defected to Dennis long before my business trip. I patted my breast pocket. Then I took out a small cellophane bag with 2 fingers. I kept my daughter's hair in it, cut off when she was a year old. All this time, I kept it as a talisman. In my memory, she was always that little girl, my daughter, whom I loved with all my heart. I stopped and looked at the strand of blonde hair for a long time. Then I couldn't stand it and cried. Dear listeners, your support is very important to us. If you like our story, please like, comment and subscribe. It's very motivating for us.